welcome to Aviation Careers Podcast. My name is Carl Valeri, and I'll be your host today. It's now July 2024, and we've been in a hiring slowdown for more than half a year, and it's deepening. In January, I discussed 12 actions you can take during a hiring slowdown this year, but I also wanted to add some color to that. Since this episode aired in January, we started a group coaching mastermind where we give industry updates on a monthly basis, along with inspirational message, an informational topic, and a question and answer session. In today's episode, I'm going to replay the industry updates section of the March 2024 mastermind group, because I think it would be really helpful for you to understand the current hiring environment. If you're interested in joining the mastermind group coaching, it's real simple. You can try it out for free using the Coach It Forward coupon. Go to aviationcareerspodcast.com/coaching. Scroll to the bottom, go to the group coaching. In those sessions, it's a real good supplement to one-on-one coaching, because what we do is we have an inspirational message, we have an informational topic, and then we also do another thing. We do an industry update on a monthly basis. You see, because in what we do here at Aviation Careers Podcast, we normally are doing content that's evergreen, meaning it's good forever, but we don't really do industry updates and news. Part of that group coaching, we decided to put some news in there. I do my annual update, obviously, on the pilot shortage. But one of the things I really want to do here in that group coaching is give people a monthly update as to what's going on. So the other thing we do, we have a topic, and besides the inspirational message, we do some informational topics. We do the industry update. And then the other part that's really cool is we have a Q&A session. So that's what you're going to hear me talking about during this whole episode that I have here as far as the March 2024 group coaching mastermind. And that's where we talk about the industry update and what's happening with hiring. But also, I highly recommend going back to our January episode and listening to the hiring slowdown as far as what we can do, et cetera, and or what you can do, I should say, and also the industry update. The reason we don't do those industry updates and those news items here is, again, we want to make sure this content is good for you forever. We are here for the long game. We're here for your career. We're not here to talk about news. News does affect you, but we're here to help you with your career and help you move forward. So let's go listen. We're going to go jump into that group coaching mastermind at the point where we start talking about the topic, and I'll talk to you on the other end of this. What's affecting the hiring in 2024? I know a lot of people asked me about the hiring slowdown in 2024, and we had that video that came out as a regular podcast. I really want to go into a little bit deeper, a little more nuance in that as far as what's happening and how things are affecting the hiring and certain externalities that we may not understand. To kind of give you a little bit of background about myself, as many of you know, I used to own a business. One of the things that I did is I was a seafood trader, international seafood trader. And the way that I made my money is actually through arbitrage in the seafood pricing. Now, how did I do that? One thing I did is listen to all the different news that's out there and understand why things affect the price of a piece of fish. Well, I've taken that knowledge and applied it here to the aviation world, and basically taking all these news items and all the externalities, et cetera, and applied them into from a large picture view as to how it's affecting the hiring. One thing that I think is a very good idea to do is when you're looking at any of this stuff online, it could be, the things like the news, the forums, et cetera, is try to take things with a grain of salt. I do like forums for one thing, and that's getting information. The one thing I don't like about the forums, and you all know this, is that they kind of devolve into some negativity. So a lot of times you'll get a question, then it devolves from there. So for instance, you'll hear someone say, well, with all the Boeing problems, Boeing is going out of business. I don't think that's going to happen, because another thing we don't realize is Boeing's a big company. Boeing makes a lot of its money on contracts, and they also make a lot of money in the commercial aviation. The contracts being for the government. They sell many different things to the government, from fighters to satellites to many other things. So I think we have to look at that not just from our viewpoint in the aviation world, but from everybody's viewpoint. So that's really important. But let's just talk a little bit about Boeing. Big news, had a door fly off Alaskan Airlines. That actually is just a symptom of a much deeper problem that's within Boeing. And what that has done for us, how does that affect us? What that's done to us is it's caused delays in aircraft being delivered to customers. It's also stopped certain airplanes from flying from time to time. And that means because of inspections. So what does that mean? That means there's less flying. And there's less flying, that means there's less pilots needed. That's slowed down the supply chain. Let's talk about how Boeing has affected Airbus. Airbus is the largest deliverer of narrow bodies now. Well, how does that affect Airbus? Well, think about it. If you're somebody who owns Boeing and you don't want to get stuck holding on to all these orders and waiting, you would go out and buy an Airbus. Well, the problem is you're not going to be able to buy that Airbus because there's a lot of backlog on orders for Airbus. Plus another issue. Airbus, Boeing with the door, Airbus with the engines. Remember that a while ago they came out with these new engines. It's called the NEO engine, the new engine option on the Airbus. Interestingly enough, I do teach on that, and it's really fascinating. It's amazing how much fuel that actually saves. But when they first rolled out that new NEO engine, they had a lot of problems and engine shutdowns. They've had some Boeing and bending, I guess is a better way to say, because Boeing is an aircraft company, but that's actually what is Boeing in the actual blades. And that has caused us to operate those aircraft maybe at a lower altitude. There's certain issues with the rubber, the scrubber, that kind of thing that's on the engine. So we haven't actually been able to use those airplanes to their full capacity. But even bigger than that is the fact that on these NEO engines, there's a thing called additive manufacturing, and that's actually something that we all know about is people, printing. They'll go out and actually be able to print, say a cup. They can make a cup and print that, which is pretty cool. That's called additive manufacturing, and for that, in the NEO engines, they do that with the metals, and those metals have had some issues. So now what has happened? They've had to first of all inspect those engines that have come out, and they've had to re-inspect ones that are also hanging on airplanes right now. So they're parking those airplanes. They've actually said, hey, listen, you can't fly those airplanes. So now we have less Boeings, less Airbuses, single-aisle aircraft, the largest in the world. Now we can't get those, or they're being parked. And that's an issue because when they're parked, we're not flying, less flying for everybody. That means we need less pilots. It's a little bigger than I think people are realizing, is that it's going to be in the next year and a half that they're going to have to go through all these aircraft. Now, does that affect people that don't have those NEO engines? Of course not. But that's the direction most airlines are going, and that's the direction a lot of the low-cost carriers have gone. So, for instance, there's a low-cost carrier that was in the forefront of buying these NEO engines, and what happened is they had to stop flying some of those and ground the fleet with those NEO engines for a while. We're seeing that happen again with this additive manufacturing. Not as widespread as that was, but worse because of the fact that they have to be on the ground longer. They got to pull the motors off and put new ones on. Well, it takes a little while to make a motor. So that's not going to happen overnight. That's an issue with the Airbus. So now Airbus and Boeing, there's some issues there. So that's causing a little bit of a hiring slowdown because they can't get enough airplanes. They can't fly those airplanes they have. Therefore, they don't need the pilots to fly them. Let's look at cargo. And remember, all these things affect everybody, the whole ecosystem of aviation and aviation hiring. And remember, I'm just looking at this from our viewpoint of hiring into the airlines. So from the cargo side, there's another thing that's happened is that, people are going to stores now and they're not having things shipped so much to their actual home. So a little bit of that cargo, or a lot of that cargo, was increased during the pandemic because of Amazon and all those online ordering. That's come back a little bit. There's also a little bit of a slowdown in general in buying online. So that has caused a little bit of a slowdown in the cargo business. And we've seen this play out within the cargo world with actually airlines starting to actually furlough certain employees. Again, we're just looking at this from a viewpoint of pilots, mechanics, etc. there's another part of this equation we have to look at from the cargo standpoint. Is it affecting the jobs right now as far as hiring and furloughing? Well, less people are being furloughed than would be if there weren't a contract. What does that mean? So remember, a lot of these contracts with the pilots and with the mechanics and the flight attendants make it difficult for people to actually furlough, and it's for a reason. And let me explain this. Why do we want to do furloughs? Our business in aviation is very cyclic, right? It goes up and down. During those periods where it goes down, they have the shoulder periods and they actually have the really busy periods. You look at like during the summer, that type of thing. During those slow periods, airlines would love to furlough people, to say, hey, go away, come back when business gets better. But to give some stability in earning to those people that are union members, what have they done? They've actually put in their contracts that you can't furlough somebody unless you first try other methods of stopping those furloughs. And now what are those methods? And just full disclosure, I used to be the furlough rep for United Express. Well, some of the things that we came up with are reduced flying lines, so they wouldn't have to furlough people. What does that mean? Well, they'll convince people to, hey, we'll pay you 20 hours a month, which you normally get paid 70, but now we're going to pay you 20, and you have to stay at home. You can't fly for those 20 hours. And why is that a benefit to them? Is because of the fact that they can keep you on. You're a scalable workforce, and they don't have to pay for you to be furloughed. Now, why would they have to pay for you to be furloughed? That's the biggest question I get, because of the contracts. Many contracts are built that for every year that you've actually worked for a company, you will get 1 month pay if you go on furlough. So say you've worked for 10 years. That's 10 months of pay. Well, might make sense if you're going to furlough someone for 3 months. Yeah, we're going to have to pay you anyway, so let's keep you on property. But let's come to an agreement with the union and say, hey, instead of us, paying them full, why don't we come to an agreement, because we may have to go into bankruptcy or something. Why don't we come to an agreement where these guys don't fly, these pilots don't fly, but we'll pay them a reduced rate, but they can stay at home. And it's guaranteed they can stay at home. They don't have to do anything with the company, and they get their travel benefits, and they get all their benefits, for retirement, etc. Boy, that's a great deal. So that's what happens there. So that's actually what happens, is that there's not as many people being furloughed at those cargo carriers because they want to furlough right now, right? Because there's such a slowdown because of that. So therefore, if they're reducing the flying and they're not able to furlough those people, they're also not bringing people on, right? If you're furloughing people, you're not going to be hiring. So therefore, the people that are at, say, the legacies or the regionals that want to go to the cargo carriers, and we're talking large cargo carriers, not going to be able to make it. So that's something we have to think about, is that, okay, now we have this cargo that's really slowed down to the point where they want to furlough. And instead of furloughing, they're actually not hiring people, but they're also not throwing people on the street. So there's a long explanation as far as what's affecting cargo. So there we have Boeing issues, we have Airbus issues, we have the cargo slowdown. So all these places that are doing less flying and less pilots, therefore, for different reasons, are causing us to have the one result, and that's not being able to get hired. So what else? What else could happen? Well, there's another thing that's going on right now, and we've actually seen this in the news lately with the fact that they're moving some air traffic controllers from one center to another, and that's actually up from out of Newark down to Philadelphia, is the fact that we have a shortage right now of air traffic controllers. And we've kind of talked about this, and I had somebody on the show talking about from Canada asking about our shortage here, if they're having a shortage here also. Honestly, I think our shortage is much worse in the United States. And you see this now in the news, even recently, with them saying, hey, listen, we're going to try really hard to train some new air traffic controllers. The only issue is the fact that you can't actually train somebody overnight, and it takes a long time. So therefore, what has happened? You've actually had this 3-year time span in many times to get someone all the way up to speed to be an air traffic controller in New York airspace, say. But that's where we have the biggest shortage. So therefore, the result of that is causing the government to ask the airlines to reduce their flying. There was actually, they did an ask up in New York to reduce flying by 10% out of New York. Well, 10% is a lot. And so they've asked them to bring down 10%, and we're seeing the airlines doing that. How does that affect us now? Well, that affects us because there's less people that are hiring during that period. And because they need less pilots because they can't fly those routes. And again, going back to the reason as to why they don't furlough, almost all the airlines have those contracts that make it more difficult to furlough. So hopefully that's starting to make a little sense there as far as what's affecting it. Now, we've talked a lot about, ATC, the majors, that type of thing. But how about at the regionals? One of the things that we've seen at the regionals as far as hiring is the fact that we don't have enough qualified pilots to fly as captains. And that means they have to have enough hours to actually move over to the left seat in a Part 121 or a melding of Part 121, 135. That actually is still the case, except the good news. So let's look at the shining side of this. The good news is the fact that because of the slowdown in hiring, we're not seeing as many captains go off to the majors and the legacies, and therefore we're actually seeing the ability for those regionals to actually expand a little bit and be able to hire some people because of the fact that they can hire people because they can actually have those people upgrade and therefore leave a spot open for another first officer to come in there. So that's a little bit of and that's really nuanced because it's the slowdown is industry wide. And if you're in the Northeast and you have to cut flights, you have to cut flights out of your regionals. So that may not affect someone there, but you have to look throughout the whole system and say, okay, because of the fact that there's less hiring happening at the majors, therefore there's more people that have the hours because they're slowing the hiring to upgrade at the regional airlines. Therefore, there's a little bit of movement within the regionals. But even with all these other slowdowns, so taking all this into effect, the Boeing, the Airbus issues, the cargo, the air traffic control, the lack of qualified pilots at the regionals, that's going away a little bit, but then you have the other side of it slowing down. It's causing an overall effect that affects us, and that is hiring. It's actually affecting hiring, and it's affecting it it's a headwind. It's in a negative manner, and that's all we care about, right, is the hiring and what's happening going forward. Don't want to get negative, but I do want to make sure that you understand that there's a lot of headwinds here. Can this change? Obviously, it can change. Is it going to take time? Obviously, it's going to take time. Going back to Boeing and to Airbus, excluding all the issues they're having with maintenance, we're still having supply chain issues. That has not gone away. And this has made that supply chain of aircraft be a bigger issue, but it's also, there's a supply chain issues in general with aircraft. So we're seeing that play out too. So there's a lot of things hitting the industry all at once, and that's why you're seeing a big slowdown. If we have a recession, is it going to be worse? Yeah, of course. Can anybody predict that? Well, I'm going to have to look at my crystal ball here and ask. But for those of us that don't realize that the crystal ball is pretty accurate, but we get it wrong sometimes. And remember, there's a lot of experts out there that understand the industry and understand the predicting of the future, but even they get it wrong. I mean, like I said, I used to be in the seafood business. I could predict the price of fish better than most, but I was probably wrong about 20% of the time. So when you're looking at analysis, even with my analysis, take everything with a grain of salt. I've been doing this for a couple decades, watching the hiring cycles, et cetera. So let's take away and just realize that these are the things that are affecting the hiring in 2024. But the most important thing is, what can we do about it, right? So what is it we as pilots can do to become more competitive in the future? And obviously this is a very pilot-centric meeting that we're having here as far as moving forward in your career. So let's talk about some of those things to make yourself more competitive in the future. So number one is the hours. How do you become more competitive? You keep flying. The thing that I really wish wouldn't happen, and I don't know how I could change this. Maybe I just have to realize I can't change everybody, but I wish people wouldn't stop flying. I mean, that actually is probably the most frustrating thing for me when I'm coaching, is actually seeing people quit flying. And that's difficult. And what do I mean by that? Well, they see a slowdown and they say, okay, the timing's off. I can't tell you how many times I've coached people that have taken a break from flying to come back to it, to again have to take another break because the industry has come down. So what I'd like you to do, and of course, trying to set this up is very important, is try to plan so that you can make it through whatever downturn there might be. The depth, the breadth of this downturn, you don't know what it is. You don't know how long it'll be. But really, most importantly, is to keep flying so you can build your hours. Why is that? Because when the other people quit flying, they stop building hours while you're continuing to build hours. So therefore, when things happen again, they're going to take the people with the most hours, and that'll be you. Good example. When I got started in aviation, was looking at it as a career, my flight instructor, to get hired at the regionals, had about 5,000 hours and had hundreds of hours of multi-time. And that sounds crazy. That's like what you would do to get hired at a major. Well, with all that said, we see some of that happen again. Not a 5,000 hour thing, I don't think, but you will see, maybe 2,000 hours now to get hired at the majors, 3,000 hours. The other thing too is in those hours, try to get quality time. For instance, you're at a regional. You're like, I'm going to stay in the right seat. I'm not going to upgrade. They're going to hire me anyway. Well, who do you think the first person is that they're going to hire? They're going to hire the person with the most qualification. They're going to hire somebody that has pilot and command time. If they have, remember, there used to be 1,000 hours pilot and command time to get hired with a major airline. So that is not going to be the case for a little while, but it could be if things go that route. So I would suggest that if you're going to build hours, I would start possibly looking at an upgrade to get those PIC time. And the other thing with the PIC time that helps you, again, a little more nuanced, is that there's flying that's happening overseas. Now, people ask me what that means. Places like Jordan or Azerbaijan or China, that these governments are looking for pilots that are experienced. The majority of them, when you're trying to get hired, want to see 1,000 hours PIC in a type aircraft. It's very rare that you'll see any of these airlines hire first officers. And I understand, I know we got people hired at Flybe many years ago to fly in the right seat of a turboprop. Those are exceptions to the rule. There's always an exception to every rule. But in general, you want to try to get yourself to that 1,000 hours PIC if you can. So again, keep building your hours, keep moving forward. I think that's something that we a lot of times forget to do. And even sometimes we take a break, if you're, and it's good to take a break, but don't take it for too long. Don't slow down to the point where you're crawling. There is a big difference there. So if you're the person that's getting 100 to 130 hours a month, maybe pull back to 100 to 75, but don't go all the way back to 20. And realizing that, I know I can get hired in the future, so I'm not worried about it. I'll just wait for it to come back to the fact that all I need is 1,500 hours to get to a major. Not a good idea. Going back to my example of my friend that had 5,000 hours to get hired with a regional, a couple years later, the regionals are hiring people with 500 hours. Then 250 hours. Remember, back then you didn't need your ATP. You just had a commercial license. So you're going to say to me, well, Carl, why don't I just wait for that? Why don't I just wait for the time when it comes back? Well, that's not a good way to look at it, because what if it doesn't ever come? So you want to hope for the best, but plan for the worst. And I think that's in anything you do. Even when you're doing your flight plans, right? You always have an alternate. Build your hours, build quality time. You definitely have to build those hours towards your ATP. That's the ultimate goal. So do me a favor, write down on a piece of paper the hours that are required for you to get your multi-engine ATP, and then track that. A lot of these new software packages, you can do it very easily, but look at that every so often and see where you're deficient and say, hey, this is my next goal. I need to build these type of hours. Along with those hours come another thing, and that's the ratings. I really think it's important to try to get as many ratings as you can. I get this question often, and that is, should I get my double I? Say you're a flight instructor, should I get my double I? And I'd love to, if the person was on today, to speak up. I don't think they actually made it on today, but had a question from someone said, hey, should I get my double I? I'm not sure. What should I do? I said, go for it. And I'll tell you why. And this is really cool. They were kind of on the fence, but said, I'm going to do it because I trust your judgment. And boom, they did it. Now they've got all these interviews. Why the double I? Because larger schools want to hire people that can work with all the students. If you're going to go to an academy or any of the larger flight schools, you're going to need to be able to teach all their students. If you're working on your own at a small airport, you're your own boss, you can do whatever you want. If you want to get hired with one of these bigger schools that's flying you 100 hours a month, you're going to need your double I, your instrument instructor license. So that's why I highly recommend that. The success story there and is the fact that this person actually got hired, is going for their final interview, the final setup for the actual hiring and writing the contract. Well, during that period, this person actually was able to set up some other interviews and get some counter offers. So even today, even this tough environment, you're seeing people that are fighting over instructors. And I'll tell you what, this is a really good instructor and a hard worker, a really good student, and has everything set up. And that's why they see that. Here's a person that's done really well, went to college, has everything all set, and they want to hire this person because they have their double I. They actually called one of the schools months ago that this person's going for their final interview with, and they said, listen, we can't hire you without your double I. We'll get it for you, but we're not going to actually let you work as a flight instructor because you have to have that. Other ratings. Are other ratings worth it? Like the ATP, CTP, and by the way, Matt is on right now, and he's in the background just kind of putting in questions. So Matt, please, if you do have some questions, start, if there's anybody in the chat, start putting those out there. So, yeah. So in the everyone chat there, you'll see let me take a look here. And again, Matt will interrupt me if there are questions, but I'll continue on with the ratings. So I talked about the double I. I talked about the ATP a little bit, or I haven't, I should say. Should I get my ATP? Should I do my CTP ATP? Well, if you have the time and money, yes. I would wait. If you have an offer with an airline that they're going to do that for you, I'd wait, let them do it. Getting your type rating, that would be a big expense. If someone else is paying for it, I know a lot of people say they have some VA benefits they're not going to use in any other way. Then you can get a type rating. Is it going to help you? It will, but how much? It'll help you marginally, and that's the most important thing. So that is actually something you just think about. And I know I have questions coming in. I'm going to get to that. I just want to finish up these points, and then we'll get to that. As far as a CTP, ATP, yes, if you have the time, go for it. As far as classes, as far as like a good example, a jet transition program, a class that's going to help you understand systems and understand how to fly a jet. And that's like a certificate you can get. Is that meaningful to anything other than that little printed certificate? Not so much for your ratings, but think about this. A lot of times when you're doing those classes, whether it's a CTP, ATP, or where you're going for this jet transition training, you're actually within the same simulators as the people that are at the airlines. As a matter of fact, a lot of these sims are actually rented from airlines. So the company that does the training is renting them from these airlines. And what happens? You go to those airlines and you meet people from that airline the one you may even want to work for. And it's a great networking opportunity. Looks good. It shows that you can fly the jet, possibly. It's a helpful, that's for sure. But the networking opportunity, oh my gosh, that's absolutely terrific. As far as getting the actual ATP, that actually is something to look at. Again, it's marginal as far as whether it's helpful. One thing I think is helpful, though, I talked about the double I. That's a given. The MEI, the multi-engine instructor, should I get that? The beauty about the multi-engine instructor license is this. The type of client that you will be able to get with the multi-engine instructor license is the person that actually has the money to possibly hire you as a pilot or consistently bring you back to do some retraining. A great example is I just happened to be at an airport where one of the largest landowners in Florida has a small airplane, and he has his own airport, as a matter of fact, a paved runway, and asked me if I could do his renewal, his flight review. And I was like, sure, I'll do that for you. Unfortunately, the day happened and I got sick or something, and someone else took it. Well, what's really cool is the other person that took that flight review, kind of wish I was able to do it, he wound up doing some flying for that person. That person actually was able to buy a jet and fly around in a jet. So that person actually got the opportunity to get hired into flying that jet. He actually wound up getting a job with another airline. He didn't really fly the jet, but at least he had that opportunity to do it, which he wouldn't have otherwise without having his multi-engine instructor license. Great example too, with my multi-instructor license, I was in an environment where a lot of people had some money. I could fly them around and actually build ours in a twin. So really, that's important looking at that rating. I know we're getting a little bit short on time, so let me get up to the questions in 1 second. I got a couple more things to go over. To be competitive right now in the market, network. Get on LinkedIn, find out where the shows are, connect with people at the airlines you want to work for, connect with the recruiters, connect with people you know, connect with those people that work there that you might know. You don't have to talk to them, just connect with them, follow them, because a lot of times you're going to get information that way. Facebook groups are another thing. Shows, air shows. Oh my gosh, that is such a target-rich environment. That has changed dramatically in the past 10 years. There are so many people there that are wanting to hire you at air shows. And now all the recruiters have realized this. During this recording, we're about to go to Sun and Fun April 9th through the 14th. Remember to come check us out over at A41 at our booth, Terminal in Hangar A. There are so many recruiters that are going there at the job fair and the job fair tents. They're full. They're so full that they've actually spilled over into the regular tents. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be next to Piedmont Airlines. It's going to be our booth. You'll see the big banner that says Aviation Careers Podcast. Please come by and get a picture with me there. So air shows. Air shows, also job fairs. So there's two kinds of job fairs. There's a job fairs at the air shows, and then there's job fairs that are job fairs. I go back to NGPA, Women in Aviation, WIIA, PAPA. There's all sorts of organizations out there, and you can look at them up on the internet. I'll try to get some listed here in the show notes. But go join those. Go to their job fairs and network. Amazingly enough, and you can go back and listen to this episode, had a person that actually came here to Sun and Fun, got hired by a regional airline at the air show. Even though they really weren't hiring, they're like, no, you're hired. I mean, that's absolutely terrific. So make sure you do go to those job fairs and go to those shows. As many as you can. I mean, there's just so much you can do, but try as hard as you can. Go throughout the network and start seeing what's out there, what's happening. I thought about doing a forum where there's something on there that shows all those job fairs, but I do have a friend that started a website many years ago. I used to fly with him. It's called Aero Crew News. I love what he's done with that, and Craig has done a great job putting that together. As a matter of fact, it's really large, and I'd really highly recommend Aero Crew News. Also, another thing to be competitive is if you're looking to get these ratings, get those scholarships. There are scholarships for getting ratings, 737 ratings and Airbus ratings. I have one story there. Had someone, went to a Women in Aviation conference, got a 737 rating and an Airbus rating, decided to give back the Airbus rating for someone else to get that scholarship. Imagine that, getting 2 scholarships. I mean, that's absolutely just amazing. And going back to what we were talking about, LinkedIn, talking about the job fairs, it is a great resource for those job fairs. Thanks for pointing that out. Behind the scenes, actually, Matt Len is helping out with production. He wanted me to remind folks that, yes, LinkedIn is a great resource because, and not just job fairs, but everything. Because when they start hiring and the window is open, you're going to hear about it on LinkedIn. The airline I work for, they posted on LinkedIn, hey, we're excited to be opening up this. We're excited to be at NGPA or WIIA or PAPA or whatever organization is out there, and you see it first there. We're traveling to all these different organizations. So that's a real good point to bring up. So that's kind of the things I wanted to talk about. Hopefully you're enjoying this. Another thing I want to put out is feedback at aviationcareerspodcast.com. Let me know what time's best for these group coaching sessions. And if you would be willing to come on and actually talk about some of the things that are on here. Let's see. Let me see from Mr. Matt. I'm going to look at so one more thing. Yes, thanks for reminding me, Matt. Scholarships, going back to the psychology of scholarships. I can't tell you how many times, number one, people have said, I can't get a scholarship because I'm too old. This isn't just for young people. This is for everybody. The other part of that, too, is because that's, our psychology is that we can only get scholarships if we're younger. That's definitely not true. The second part of that, and this is really interesting. I never understood this, but finally figured it out. Many times people get scholarships to show that they can get a scholarship, but they never use them. It's something they want to put on their resume. It works. I hate to say it, it works. Think about this. When you're writing your resume and say you received this scholarship and this scholarship and this scholarship and this scholarship, if you received 5 scholarships from all these different aviation organizations, as a recruiter, I'd be sitting there thinking, maybe this is somebody I need to hire. And that's why they do that. And the first time I was introduced to this was at, I almost pointed out a school somewhere that a lot of those students were high school students, and many of the parents would have their students apply for those scholarships. And why did they want them to apply for the scholarships? They didn't need them. They just wanted them to win the scholarships. A couple of reasons, psychologically, for bragging rights. They might say, hey, my son or daughter got this scholarship. But it also helped them psychologically because now they won. So now they're a winner. And winners become winners become winners. They continue to win because they have that attitude. And also that's put on their resume that they won a scholarship. The sad part of that is that a lot of scholarships go by the wayside because people don't want them. The best scholarships I've seen are the ones that say, hey, listen, I really don't want this scholarship. I just wanted to win it. Could you give it to someone that really needs it? And that happens. And a really good success story is somebody that we all know, and I won't call him out because he didn't agree for me to put this on here, but the Arthur Godfrey Foundation. Arthur Godfrey was a really great radio host, but also an avid aviator. His foundation has a scholarship, and that's for the glider scholarship for a younger person to get their glider certificate. 2 people won it, and the one person that won it said, I don't need the money. I'll take the award, but could you give the money to somebody else? They gave it to that person that won the first one. So they got double the money, were able to do their whole rating with that scholarship. So again, understand that the psychology of scholarships, number one, people think they can't get them, so they don't apply. Therefore, a lot of them are still open. The biggest problem we have with scholarships is a lot of times they go unused. And for the other reason too, the psychology of scholarships is that I want my son, daughter to actually win a scholarship so they can have the confidence to be a winner so they can keep winning and going forward. And also I have bragging rights for my child. And that's something we see a lot. So that's kind of interesting, isn't it? It's something that's absolutely different. Something I never even thought of. Why in the world would somebody do that, have a scholar, try to get awarded a scholarship and then not use it? I mean, heck, if I got the money, I'd use it. I'd figure something out. I mean, I have a bunch of ratings, but heck, I'd get like a seaplane rating or something. I don't know. There's a lot of stipulations with scholarships, though. So that is a challenge. By the way, if you know somebody who has a scholarships, tell them to put in the scholarships guide because, again, we try to get them all in there to help people find those. If you're looking for the scholarships guide, pay it forward. That's the coupon. Tell your friends. And also, every episode we do have sponsors. And in the front of that episode, I try to lead off with what the actual coupon code is for the scholarships guide. So tell your friends that if they want a free scholarship, listen to the first 3 minutes of my podcast. You'll find a new one. Anyway, Matt, are we ready for questions? I know you've been queuing these up here. So let me go take a look here, Mr. Matt. I don't think I can bring you in, but so as far as submitting questions. I talked about a little bit. Feedback at aviationcareerspodcast.com. If you're online right now, if you look at the chat, it has everybody in the chat here. You can actually ask a question in there. I know that Matt has had some questions come in. If you look in the chat right now, he's placed them up there. So if you can't be here, you were listening to this at a later date, feedback@aviationcareerspodcast.com. We'll answer your question in a future one. These are the questions we just do here in the coaching group coaching session. So let's start with number one, Matt. Question number one, and let's see. I am going to look at, here we go. Question one, I want to find out more about one-on-one coaching. Thank you. Oh, that's a good point. This is group coaching, and there's a lot here that's anonymous. Obviously, just you can go and buy our one-on-one coaching, because there's a lot of personal information that we have that's on there that we don't want to share with other people. And that's why we do the one-on-one coaching. I'm doing this just because I think a lot of the coaching that I do can be in a group session. As a matter of fact, I'm probably going to do a lot of the things that I repeat all the time in my regular coaching sessions, I'm going to put here in the group coaching. A good example is interview prep, the tell me about a time questions, those type of things. I'm going to try to get someone to come on and answer those questions and see if they want to be critiqued while I'm doing that. I want to do that in a coaching session. That's it's a tough thing for someone to do. I also do the same. I have the same speech every single time. Are you eligible to become an airline pilot? And I'm going to talk about that too. So let's talk. So if you want, as far as one-on-one coaching, we definitely can do that, but those are what's coming up. Let's see. Going to our next question, Mr. Matt, he's putting it up there, is question number 2. Says, let's see, can you talk about some of out-of-the-box ideas to get a paying job if you have all your ratings, but there are no CFI jobs in your local area, but do not want to move? Okay, so here's a CFI that is in the local area, but wants to look for other jobs, some of the out-of-the-box jobs. So let's talk a little bit about that. That's a great question. And so I'm going to, since I'm here in Lakeland, I'm going to give an example sitting here in Lakeland. I'm a CFI. Nobody here is hiring. I'm in a building with multiple flight schools, but I'm just not lucky. I get done with all my ratings and all my CFI ratings, and nobody's hiring. First of all, make sure I get my multi-engine instructor. I had to go back to that one point, get that done. But as far as other jobs that are out there still are some really amazing jobs. And I'll kind of go over some of the things that I did when I was trying to look for other things. Aerial survey. Well, aren't there drones for that? Well, yeah, there are, but there's a lot of aerial survey jobs that don't or can't use drones. And a lot of times we're looking at like pipeline patrol, even, photographing developments. And I know people say, well, I can use a drone for that. A lot of these developments, like especially if it's something that's commercial or a large facility, say a power plant's a good example, you can't get in that property very easily because it's miles into the property. You may have to use an airplane. So watching the progress of that, and that's actually something you can do with an airplane you may not be able to do with a drone. Surveying, animal surveying, mammal surveying. So I actually had the opportunity to do marine mammal surveying. Remember, I live on a coastal area, and we have a lot of these manatees. If you've ever seen a manatee, it's the coolest thing. It's kind of like a miniature elephant in the water, but they're a lot more graceful. God, I hope I don't get a feedback on that one. So that is actually so that's my interpretation of what a manatee is. I mean, they're really cool, but they actually want to count these, and they have many different areas where they can count them. So I was able to get to do some of that. People ask, why doesn't NOAA do that? They do it. There's other out of the box ideas. Try to find out who's getting the actual contracts for the military or for the government jobs. Those are things like instructing military pilots. I don't know if you realize this, but a lot of military pilots are trained by civilians. There's undergraduate pilot training and initial pilot training, and that's actually some things that are done by civilians. They've been doing this for years, by the way, the government. So it's actually during a period where they don't have enough instructors or they're overloaded, they actually will hire civilians to do their flight instructing. So that's what I did. there's an Air Force base over here. And normally what they do for those people that are going from a specific job to another job in the military possibly, and they didn't go to the strict flight school route, they have a specific MOS. They have a job description at the airport here. The MacDill Air Force Base is where I'm at. But their real job is to come and get flight training. So every day they would come over to my airport and I would do their flight training for them. I found the contractor that does that. Luckily, I was at the airport and I started doing that flight training. That's actually a lot of fun because I have to say the one great thing about the military pilots is they're incredibly motivated. It's their job. They're getting paid to do it. I mean, talk about a wonderful time. So there's one, doing some of those contracts. Another thing too, especially, and I know there's some people that don't want to do this, is getting involved with some law enforcement contracts. I've been able to do some both state and local and federal law enforcement contracts where you get to train some of their pilots. Because remember this, amazingly enough, and this is something I think a lot of people don't realize, a lot of small airplanes are used by law enforcement. And those small airplanes are used for actually transportation and surveillance and training for future pilot jobs within law enforcement. So great. Let's do a for instance. A lot of times, like for surveillance, did a little bit of training there in a small airplane. Well, a lot of people don't pay attention to an airplane. So say if you're actually following somebody, it's a little bit easier in a plane that's not being recognized, like a 172 that's flown out of a local airport as opposed to a 172 that has a big star on it. It's the sheriff's office. I think they're going to look at the sheriff's office a little bit more closely and start running. And that's something that I think a lot of people don't realize. Also poaching, a lot of people, you can get involved with fish and wildlife. So I've done stuff for the sheriff's office, Tampa Police Department, the FBI, and certain different contractors there. They're going to do a background check. A lot of people have, I think, an issue with that as far as what they're, some people do, not everybody, that you're going to be doing work for a law enforcement agency. It really, there's a little bit of red tape. I get it. And they have specific ways they want to be trained, but it's really a cool thing to do. Helicopters. Now, wait a minute. Helicopter. What do you mean? Like, I'm doing training for a helicopter pilot. Well, I don't have my helicopter CFI. How the heck is that going to work? Well, get this. First of all, most of the time what they'll do is have them get their fixed wing rating and then move on to helicopters. So again, lots of opportunities with law enforcement. Just find out who those contractors are. I do know the contractor in this building that's doing some of the military contracts. Other things that you can do too is actually transporting people. Commercial flying in a small airplane. And that's something I think you and I may not realize is that little airplanes are used by businesses. It is a time machine. Even a 182 is a time machine used by a business. You know, I actually was a partner in an aircraft that was used by a firm that did work all over the state of Florida, and they used the 182 for that. And what happened? That 182 turned into a twin Baron that turned into something else that turned into a jet because they grew outside of Florida and went nationwide. So those little 182s, Senecas are another popular one. If there's a Seneca on the field, remember that there's a lot of business people, law firms, medium-sized law firms, small law firms that grow into big law firms. They use those. So what is the point there? What are those outside the box jobs? That's where that networking happens. That's where you get to know everybody at the airport. That's where you go across the field and you find out, oh, there's fish and wildlife, or there's fire. You know, you're going to go out there fishing with the folks that go out and do the fire surveys and things like that. So that's how do you find out about those jobs? You got to get out of the airport. So if there are no CFI jobs available, and I know the person that's asking this question, it sounds like to me that they're concerned about the fact that there aren't going to be any CFI jobs available. Going back to if there's no CFI jobs available, maybe you can spread out your search. Okay, so here I am, going back to where I am in Lakeland, Florida. I have a car that I can drive to other airports. That car is my magic carpet to a job. And as long as I am able to go in a radius, say I look at this radius and look all the way around, say, okay, I'm willing to drive 30 minutes to a job. Let me drive 30 minutes in all these directions to find an airport where I might be able to teach using my CFI. Hang out there, talk to the people, just stay there for a while and say, hey, listen, I really want to teach here. Don't go away and say, oh, yeah, they don't want me. Stay there and talk to them. Get to know the people. Hang out. If there's a restaurant there, have a hamburger or something like that. That's actually what I do. I look at a half-hour radius, then an hour radius, because if you are going to drive an hour to a job, it's a lot better than not having a job. And that's kind of my philosophy. There is a point of no return. I get it, where if it's like 2.5 hours of that distance, that may not work. But go outside the 1 hour radius or half-hour radius, depending on whatever you're comfortable with. Go that 2.5 hour radius, and then discover, yeah, that's something that I want to do, is go to that other job. And if they're serious about keeping me, maybe I might think about moving. And so I might want to move out of the area, that local area, and look at that other area. But that doesn't really answer this person's question. They do not want to leave that local area, and I get it. They really don't want to leave the area that they're in. The other way to prevent yourself from not having a job is find a target-rich environment or area, which happens to be where I am in Central Florida, Arizona, Southern California, where there's lots of different flight schools, and there's tons of people that are around that are wanting to hire you eventually, and just get out there, bang on doors, and keep driving around and around and around till you get hired by one of them. And that's actually what makes it easier for this environment here, is that I'm in an area that I have so many flight schools along the route. And I'm going to try to give an example. Hopefully this is a good example. So baseball, I kind of got into baseball recently, right? I'm going to use a baseball analogy. And I think the coolest thing is spring training and some of these smaller teams that are out there, and AA, AAA, whatever it may be. Well, I have a really cool environment, target-rich environment for spring training and for baseball at minor leagues. I'm on I-4, and I call it the I-4 corridor for baseball. I have 4 teams that I can go to within an hour drive. 4 baseball teams. I now can watch baseball all the time whenever I want, and that's only within an hour's drive. Now let's relate that to aviation. I'm along I-4, and I could easily find at least 4, 5, 6 airports that I can actually teach at. So now I can watch baseball when I want, I can teach whenever I want, and that's by being in the proper area. So if you are someone who's looking at a job and you don't want to move out of that area, and you have moved to that area, or are moving to that area because of a CFI job, look around you. Don't just look in that one airport. If you are in an area where you're in a remote area and that's all you can find is those CFI jobs that are in that one little area, and there's not much else around, you can't move, then you're kind of stuck. And that happens. There are people that can't move. You do the best with what you have. That's where you resort to getting people to come to you. That's where you get on the internet. That's where you go back to your LinkedIn page. That's where you tell people that you have this product or service, this flight instruction service. And I think that is something that you can do. Get them in your door. Go out there, start doing a YouTube. And YouTube is free. I mean, that's pretty wild. You could actually do a YouTube channel and say, hey guys, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing lesson number 1. If you have nobody to teach, then teach to nobody. And what do I mean by that? Just go ahead and put it out there on the internet. If you can't teach anybody, teach nobody, meaning go ahead and put it on YouTube. You may find that you're really good at teaching. Someone will discover you. Someone will say, hey, wait a minute, I like the way this guy talks to me about doing stalls, steep turns, slow flight. That YouTube can be additive in a very quick manner. Believe me, it's been a big help for me, and I think it'd be a big help for you. So don't forget about that as an alternative means of getting out there and saying, hey, listen, I'm available. It doesn't cost anything to start a YouTube channel. Well, Matt, I think that's all we have I was going to try to bring you in. I don't think there is a way to get you into the whole show and say hi to everybody, but that's okay. I don't know if I think I have him just as a producer out here, but with all that said, Matt, are we done with all the questions? I think we are. Yep, that's it. I think that's all we have. I know we only have 4 minutes, so I need to probably close out here shortly. I did want to try to keep this within an hour, but hopefully, going back to this session, the reason we're doing this is I really want to inspire you, I want to inform you, make this collaborative, just like we've done here, asking questions online. But I also want to make sure that you come back. We do this, you can cancel at any time. That's why I made it so inexpensive. is that it's a monthly fee. And if you decide, okay, I'm done, I'm where I want to be, I'm out, then that's perfect. Then it's time to stop your subscription and say, thank you for this, we'll move on. But I know it's really tough to get into my schedule. I want to get feedback from you as to when you think these should be. It's 7 p.m. East Coast time right now. Should it be some other time? I'd like to hear your feedback on that. And just remember that all these, as long as you're a member of our group coaching, all these sessions will be recorded and out there for you. But the biggest thing that I think we should look at is the fact that we need to, at this time frame, in a time frame of whatever, March of 2024, there's a little bit of a slowdown. And on those forums that we see, sometimes we're getting a lot of negativity and the world is falling. Remember, don't listen to the naysayers. If this is something you really want to do, then do that. Make sure if you're really passionate about this, that you continue working towards that goal, because this isn't a short game, it's a long game. Every moment you're at an airport learning something or flying, it's adding to you as a person and also to you as an aviator, and increasing both your knowledge, it's increasing your networking, it's increasing everything about your life within that aviation community in ways that you don't even realize. And I want you to do this for me. Don't stop. Continue moving forward in your career by doing something every single day, something really small, or even signing up for this or telling people about this. We're doing this group coaching because I think this is going to help a lot of people, and I've gotten a lot of positive feedback on this whole group coaching and the fact that it's going to help a lot of people. If you want to come on and tell your story, I'd love to have you on. I'll bring you on as a guest and bring you in out of the chat, out of the group as one of the audience here. You can actually come on here and request to be on, and we'll have you talk a little bit about your story, and I think that would be terrific. But this is a time that we've seen over and over where there's a bit of a slowdown. We don't know what the future is going to bring. I could look at my crystal ball. I got this great aviation crystal ball. It's always right, because it doesn't predict much. I just ask it, hey, are we going to have a recession? Yes, we will someday. Thank you very much, crystal ball. But when will that recession be? Well, that's a little fuzzy. You can't predict exactly when things are happening. But we can do this. We can act on things. And that's what I want you to do, is take action. And I want you to take action now and keep moving forward in your career each and every day. Well, I hope you enjoyed the group coaching mastermind as far as the industry update. I think that was a little helpful to give you a little more color as to what's going on in the industry. And also another thing that I think is important is to keep moving forward in your career, just like I talked about. One of the ways you can do that is actually through financing. And that's one of the ways to do that, obviously, is through our scholarships guide. And this podcast actually is sponsored by Stratus Financial. They're a private student lending organization for pilots, by pilots. They offer loans for pilot training from zero to hero. Stratus Financial understands your needs because they're pilots too. You can find out more at stratus.finance. And as a sponsor of this podcast, they're giving away a free scholarships guide by using the coupon code STRATUS. You can find that at aviationcareerspodcast.com/free and use the coupon code STRATUS. Whether you're financing the dream of flying or simply the process by taking care of your student loans, their efficient, hassle-free funding can connect you to a life of your dreams of becoming a professional pilot sooner than you thought possible. To find out more, again, visit stratus.finance, and to get the free scholarships guide, aviationcareerspodcast.com/free. Use the coupon code STRATUS. Well, again, I hope this has been helpful for you. And if you're really interested in going out to the group coaching, we have that 1 month free. It's using the coupon code Coach It Forward when you go out to the group coaching. It's only $20 a month. And the reason we do that, again, is so that you have something between the one-on-one coaching that we do here. And I also do, it's newsy. So we do industry updates every month. And I think it really is helpful. Oh, the other cool thing is that you can go back and listen to all the past group coaching sessions. We have them just exclusively for those people that are in that group coaching mastermind. And we really encourage your questions. If you can't make it, send your question to feedback@aviationcareerspodcast.com, and we'll answer it on the group coaching session. Also, if you have a question, you want us to answer it here on the podcast, go feedback at aviationcareerspodcast.com. Don't forget our contact page too. If you're thinking of stopping by the studio here, we'd love to have you come by. Just make sure you give us a heads up, because a lot of times I'm actually out flying or I'm out doing a podcast somewhere. Well, anyway, hopefully this has been helpful, but the most important thing you can do for me is to don't stop here. Once you stop this video, you're listening to the podcast, whatever it may be, do something today to move forward in your career and in your life. It could be something simple. It could be listening to this podcast, listening to other podcasts that are out there, watching some things on TikTok, Instagram, whatever it may be. Constantly fill your mind with very positive messages that are out there. It's always important to do that. But do something for me. Take one step today to move forward in your career and in your life. And I know you're going to get to your career goal faster than you think. We'll talk to you next episode. Safe flying out there.